Aussie Rules was getting much more of a showing.
There were big moments and really impressive.
This has a potential to be hugely exciting.
A wild card to throw at you. Love George Hall.
I think in the second half we saw some fantastic attacking rugby.
Performances like Dylan Peach against the Lions. It's those kind of things that you just hope that we sort of start ramping it up, and there were very few pages in the local newspaper about this match for some reason.
Pollock always felt like a selection that was going to add stardust, and you can't do much more than what he did today.
Go.Compare, proud sponsors of the Welsh Rugby Union, are delighted to power the Telegraph Rugby Podcast this summer. Go.Compare is here to support fans on their journey to satisfying insurance. Whether you're looking for the right cover for your car, home or travel plans, get peace of mind knowing you've got an expert by your side every step of the way. So, stop overpaying and start comparing with Go.Compare.
There we go. The Lions won in a land down under. We're off to a fantastic start for the British and Irish Lions tour in Australia. My name is Dymock. I'm commissioning editor for sport here at Telegraph, and I'm joined by Charlie Morgan. Charlie, just off the top of the dome there, hot takes. What did you think of that first match on Australian soil?
Clunky start, pulled away, showed the depth. Lots of lovely moments of quality to get stuck into. 54-7
for the Lions. They sort of got a nice little try to begin with. Looked really fantastic. Finn Russell set up Dan Sheehan on the far right, and it thought, right, here we go.
They scored some bangers throughout. So clunky moments, but,
there was stuff to pick through because they got off to a flyer of a start, and then they sort of invited the force onto him. But in the end, class told. There'll be stuff that we'll be going through here and now immediately after the match with the fantastic interplay, the fantastic cameos that we got from certain players. I believe we'll be talking an awful lot about a certain Henry Pollock, and also the fact that the Lions still have plenty of stuff to work on. So, coming up from us now, we will have Gavin Mairs joining us from the stadium. He's just witnessed it firsthand in the flesh. We'll be getting what's being said on the ground and what the immediate reaction is to that game. Well, through the miracle of technology, we are joined all the way from Perth by Chief Correspondent Gavin Mairs. Gav, how the hell was that?
Well, I think Lions fans will be pretty impressed, certainly by the way the second half went. It was... with the first half, we saw a bit of a disjointed display, poor discipline, very poor restarts, the odd defensive lap, and maybe the scrum wasn't as impressive as we hoped, or certainly as it was against Argentina. But I think in the second half, we saw some fantastic attacking rugby. We saw some real glimpses of what this side can do going forward. They scored 8 tries in all. We saw, and really impressively, we want people to come forward, put their hands up, to force their way into this test side. And I think from Henry Pollock, from Joe McCarthy, Mac Hansen, Elliot Daly, I thought had an outstanding game at fullback as well, and also James Lowe as well. We expect him to be in the test side, but he had some moments too as well. So I think overall, guys, from what we saw against Argentina, when the Lions sort of lacked a ruthless edge to their attacking game, I think this was a big step forward tonight.
Well, one of the things we were talking about whilst we were watching it in real time was just the stark contrast between the last Lions tour and the style of rugby played, and then today it felt like everyone was told to go out there and chuck at least 3 offloads today, lads, have a go. And more importantly, things were sticking. It must have felt pretty exciting in real time.
No, it was, and it's a really good point, Alan, that the against Argentina, there was offloads, there was passes forced that didn't go to hand, and Andy Farrell, the head coach, found that extremely frustrating. Tonight we saw, everything. When they saw space, they were encouraged to go for it, even sometimes from behind their own goal line, and but some absolutely wonderful moments that Mac Hansen coming in. I think we saw one of the hallmarks of Andy Farrell's sides, or he wants his wingers to be involved, come in, look for the ball, be hungry. And we saw that with Hansen, James Lowe, Tomos Williams. The one worry tonight that he may have sustained a hamstring injury. We haven't yet heard how severe that is, but it was a worry to see him receive treatment. But overall, just guys looking for space, and again we have to bear in mind the context. Western Force aren't of the same quality of an Argentina, but it was really, really important for the Lions to hit the ground running, having got to Australia. They head to Brisbane tomorrow. There's little time to sort of review things, and there'll be another team announced on Monday for the game against the Reds on Wednesday. So, we are fully into it now, and I think the key thing is it's a big win for the Lions. It'll settle them, and as you say, a huge contrast in how the Lions played against South Africa 4 years ago. This has a potential to be a hugely exciting side and play some really entertaining rugby.
The Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away, though. We were talking about line-out issues for that Argentina game. The line-out looked like it was functioning pretty well, and there was some good ball off the top. Kick reception, though, Cav. What the hell was going on there? At one point, I think you calculated as 6 missed out of 7. We had it as 0 from 6, or that was what was said in commentary in real time. No matter which way you colour it, it was pretty awful. These are things you work on in training, obviously, and you let partnerships bed in and communications gets better. But there were some points where they were setting up and the ball just sailed over their heads. Big question here is what the hell is going on there?
Yeah, you really felt for Scott Cummings tonight. I think he lost at least the first 2, and it just gifted Western Force not just attacking opportunities, momentum, a foothold in the game. Which, to be fair to them, they took and they put the Lions under pressure for sustained periods of play, and particularly in that first half. But I think it's just as you say, this is one of the I guess the challenges of building a team from scratch, that you're going to have moments where the technical side of things breaks down under pressure. I thought, to be fair, the kickoffs on a lot of those occasions were brilliantly executed and were really flat and put someone like Cummings under pressure. But it was a timing issue, and oh gosh, you really feel for him in particular. But I think Joe Schmidt sees that. He's going to think they can cause the Lions trouble in terms of their kickoff reception, but hopefully it's one of those areas where they will be able to put right quickly.
I'm just going to bring Charlie in there very quickly because I was watching the match with you. Technically speaking, what was going on with those kickoffs? Because it seemed like Nick White was relishing just floating these little kicks to an area where it was sort of ambiguous whose ball it might have been. But there's only so many times you can do that before you have to adjust.
Yeah, Gav's right to mention the cohesion there, because if you think about a restart receipt as these modern players do it, when they're trying to hoist a kind of lock into the air to receive, there's a lot of variables there, a lot of things you've got to get right, and I guess that's where the strain of the unfamiliarity is going to come in. And with a good strike, with good chasing, that's always going to be under a lot of pressure. It was interesting that the Force went to the short contestable off their goal line dropout. They felt that confident that they were, even playing away from their own try line, they were ready to hoist shorter contestables because the Lions were so sort of inaccurate in that area. Now, one sort of trump card that Joe Schmidt does have is Joseph Suaalii for the Test series. And if you remember the Autumn International where Australia sneaked home against England just last November, Suaalii, I think, either won the ball back cleanly or forced errors from 4 or 5 restarts, and that is absolutely coming down the pipe at the Lions later on.
Whilst I've got you on that, Charlie, you mentioned Suaalii. Could you just give listeners a sort of flavour of what it is that makes him special and why he's the kind of perfect weapon to deploy if the Lions have the same sort of kick-off reception issues?
So he'll be the sort of main chaser from those flat strikes. He's fantastic acceleration, fantastic spring to be able to kind of disrupt those lifting pods, and he just made it was essentially a one-on-one kind of battle between him and Maro Itoje in November at Twickenham, and he just puts the security of that lifting pod under so much strain. Joe Schmidt mentioned that after the game. I remember in the press conference saying that was a huge feature of the game and a foothold for the Wallabies, and that's absolutely coming again.
Back to you, Gav. Henry Pollock, very exciting. He was speaking to Stan Sports immediately after the game. The Aussies couldn't get enough of him. It was one of those sort of all-action displays from him. It seems like a full card. Everything was going on around him, and it just felt like the kind of character that Lions tours need. I know it's very early doors, and people accuse us of jumping on the Henry Pollock bandwagon far too heavy and bringing back all our bags with us. But, I mean, it's explosive stuff.
Yeah, he's just irresistible. The spotlight just follows him. You saw, for good and bad reasons tonight, he's involved with a fracas after the Tribelli and Daly. He got a yellow card. I think more of as a result of the number of penalties that the Lions had given away, but he gave the one away that were breakdown that mattered. And but then we saw him involved. Huge contributions to 2 tries. He's just everywhere, and I mean, it was listening to Andy Farrell talk to us in Perth on Thursday about what he expected to see from Pollock, and he just loves the fact that he doesn't see any sense of hierarchy, or he's not prepared to bide his time and sort of wait 3 or 4 weeks to try and find his way into this tour. What we saw tonight was Henry Pollock grasping the opportunity. He loves it. He just embodies. It's just an irresistible kind of spirit, and I think one of the Australian commentators said, he doesn't know any better. He's too young to know about what the things that can go wrong, and I think he's just I think his contribution to the Lions so far has just been to breathe this life, this sort of competitiveness, and this just sense of joy to be here. And added to that is his incredible athletic prowess, his ability to run like an outside back, and we saw him once again doing his chip and chase, and the skills set to gather, the power and the tackle, to ride the tackle, and also a calmness in the moment that belies his years.
Ladies and gentlemen, Gavin Mairs out in Australia. Gav, one last thing. I just want one name from you. Who impressed you most apart from Henry Pollock? Is there any name that stands out at the moment that you think, wow, they're really in contention for that Test jersey?
I thought Joe McCarthy was magnificent this evening. I thought it reminded me of that barnstorming display he gave in Marseille against France at the start of last year's Six Nations. He really, really put down a marker tonight, and with Maro Itoje sitting watching the game in the stands, suddenly the competition for places in the second row has gone up several levels, and I think Andy Farrell would have been delighted to see such a heavyweight performance from him.
Gav, good stuff. Great areas out in Australia. Keep trucking on. Everybody, Gavin Mairs. Thanks, mate. Really interesting to get his dispatches from out there. It seems quite a buoyant mood after that match, and as far as you're concerned, I imagine plenty to be happy about if you're a Lions fan, if you're a Lions player. It seems like those 50-50s were coming off.
I think so. About 5 minutes after half time, there was that little spell, wasn't there, with I think Pollock's still in the bin, and the Lions lost a line out. So you're thinking of the spectres of that Aviva Stadium kind of loss going to come back to haunt them. Hansen was penalised for blocking after a Nick White box kicking. You just thought, is this going to not unravel but become a sort of clunky, sort of underwhelming win? But actually, what the strength that they'll have throughout this period in Australia is that bench, isn't it? And the depth of quality and the ability to move things around a bit. But
also in real time, probably that ability to think on your feet and not be disheartened by things, or not be distracted by things like the Western Forces Harry Hill collars. Yeah.
There are all sorts of banana skins like that. No, definitely. And yeah, I think they pushed through. And what was quite, I think, heartening overall was that in the context of Andy Farrell being seething, or being seen to be seething after the Argentina game with the ambition in the offloading game, the Lions kept that ambition. And Henry Pollock said something quite interesting in his Stan Sport interview with the guys out in Australia, which was that they worked on sort of expecting those 50-50s to come off, and that is really interesting given what the mood was like after the Argentina game, where they're sort of chastising themselves for throwing too much. I think it's going to be very interesting when we get down to the crunch and we get down to sort of the stronger provincial sides, stronger Super Rugby franchises, and the test matches, is how much they refine and maybe haul themselves in or haul back that ambition in. But I think being ambitious as a starting point and looking for those passes out of contact, looking to spread the ball from turnovers in their own 22, that's really encouraging.
But still having things that kind of show you where you need to improve. Okay, we mentioned kickoffs, and those were an absolute disaster zone. But little things like if the guy standing in what would traditionally be the 13 channel flies up and there's that little crease in between, certainly in the first half, the Force did really well of doing a little tip-on pass to someone that could find that crease. Dylan Peach was really good at getting into that gap, for example, or he did similar when there was a sort of tip-on play around the line-out, for example. Those are the kind of things that will highlight to the Lions stuff that they still really need to work on.
Yeah, for sure. I got a tweet that said, "Please, can you discuss Dylan Peach's performance? Just or at least touch on it." And that was fantastic. He's real kind of bustling, kind of quite barreling winger. He's deceptively powerful. I think he slipped 11 tackles over the 80 minutes, which is fantastic, and really put himself in the shot window to play against the Lions again later in this tour. And that's what I love about these tours, is when you get those sort of, they become familiar faces or familiar adversaries over the course of the tour, and they come back round to play the Lions again, and he'll be really confident if he gets another crack at them for the Wallabies. But yeah, for sure, I think they were more patient, the Lions, as well, which, you know, we're talking about their ambition there, but there was maybe a little bit more of a measured nature to, they were sort of less frantic when things started going well, which it became more and more frantic in the Argentina game, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm kind of hoping that throughout this tour that we get little bits of needle from the Aussies and the Aussie teams that you play, and the Aussie public as well. There was an interesting moment that we got dispatches from guys in the ground that actually, whilst the team sheet was being read out, that the stadium announcer was reading out the Lions' names, and he was saying, our former Aussie Mac Hansen, another former Aussie Sione Tuipiloto, oh, it's the Kiwi, now Irishman James Lowe, the former SA schoolboy, now Scotsman Pierre Schumann. It's just little things like that are bubbling up, and maybe I had too much ambition for Nick White to really get under some skin in that match from the Western Force, but certainly, you know, I suppose it's the performances like Dylan Peach against the Lions. It's those kind of things that you just hope that we sort of start ramping it up, and there were very few pages in the local newspaper about this match for some reason. Certainly Aussie Rules was getting much more of a showing, but we're off and running in terms of that, and I imagine we just expect it to ramp up a bit more. Yeah,
I hope that my hope is that it gets a bit more kind of claustrophobic and edgy. You're right on as they go to the East Coast now, Brisbane the next stop. But it's AFL country, isn't it? Isn't Perth? And we sort of saw those videos of the local paper, which we understand is owned by somebody with strong connections to the AFL. But it was quite sobering to see sort of 200 words on this game in print.
Not that the Lions can ever slip under the radar.
No, but it is the hype, that edge is what is absolutely what we want, especially from a tour in Australia, because they're good at that.
Now, I want to talk to you about who's up and who's down, but very quickly, I just thought it was worth dedicating some moments. What did you make of Dan Sheehan as captaincy? I said before this game kicks off that I could see him scoring some tries out on the wing. Certainly, he was a figure there for the opening try, which was a phenomenal try, and actually his part in all of this, but also some of the tries the Lions scored were superb.
There were big moments and really impressive, some really, really impressive stuff. And Dan Sheehan, I guess we're going to have to wait till the behind the scenes stuff comes out to figure out sort of what his manner is around the side,
what kind of captain he is,
what kind of orator he is. But he's very much on the field, very much a do as I do sort of figure, isn't he? And he's so impressive because of his versatility, the versatility that his dynamism gives him. And by that I mean, if he's carrying in midfield, he's going to sting defenders. He's going to gather impetus. If he's out wide, he's totally box office, as he was for that first try, when the Lions actually showed that patience that I was talking about, went through some phases before they pulled the trigger with sort of a trademark Russell kick pass, and then that's where you see as well. That's where you see a little bit of cohesion. So
because it was Sheehan tips off from the crossfield kick down to Lowe,
who doesn't panic,
and then throws an offload round his back to Sheehan to score.
Those connections really handy. And I think you think about cohesion in terms of a line-out drill being really sick, but actually where it really comes to the fore is broken field stuff and just that instinctive.
Or even just knowing spacing between players or
totally.
how someone passes.
Yeah.
Obviously, Tomos Williams got injured from in the act of scoring a phenomenal try. We're not sure if it was when he dived for the line or where he had to check his run to take a pass from James Lowe, but that was just that intersection of offloads that we were talking about, where it was that constant threat. I mean, God, it was just really ambitious. It was just fun to see. Obviously, we'll wait and see what happens with Tomos Williams. I'll put you on the spot here, actually. There's people that are yet to travel around the world and all that kind of stuff. If Tomos Williams is a serious injury, and we haven't had any dispatch about it to tell us how serious it is, but already that's the fear that people will be coming in. What would you be thinking if you were one of the selectors?
As far as a replacement,
potentially, yeah,
I'd go Ben White. I just think he's a really tidy player that offers them the ability to play at pace. That's what Gregor Townsend demands as a Scotland 9. He's really good at getting those second touches. That may be shaped by me having covered a lot of Calcutta Cup games and just seeing him score tries for fun, but he's really hungry with getting those second touches. He has a very good kicking game, more so long kicks, and he has that existing, we're talking about cohesion, he has that existing kind of chemistry with Finn Russell, which is really, really important. So that'd be my option. They've obviously had Jack Van Portfleet in camp, haven't they? And a wild card to throw at you. You will be expecting this because I really rate this guy. I love George Horn, and if they're thinking of those scurrying nines that can bounce back to blind sides and really sort of stretch sides there and nullify line speed on the open side, he's fantastic, and he's due to tour with Scotland.
Well, the thing as well is you're having to look around the world map and see where people are touring. The Ireland team, for example, is staying in Europe, so they'll be hanging about there. Whereas Wales are in Japan, Scotland, England are in Argentina, obviously. Scotland will be based in New Zealand largely, so really close. So that kind of helps, and obviously his top 14. We're talking about Ben White here. His top 14 time is done.
Yeah.
With Toulon, so potentially in the mix. Right, can I check Avicii levels with you? Who's up, who's down after that match? What are we thinking? Who's really given themselves a chance? Gav was name-checking McCarthy there, but who's up for you and who didn't really cover themselves in glory?
Elliot Daly just won't go away, will he? And I mean that in the sort of most respectful way. I remember writing a piece saying, could he be a Lions bolter who has already had 2 tours? And that was the sort of concept of bolter we were stretching, obviously.
We were stretching. You were stretching.
I was stretching it. But he's just tidy, isn't he? And a round quality company. He knows what is required on these tours.
The word Warburton kept using in commentary was classy.
Yeah, he has that genuine ability to cover 15, 11, 13. If the Lions opt for a 6-2 bench, that's going to be seriously handy.
For me, I think, interestingly, who's up and who's down. I'll tell you what, Mac Hansen made quite a few errors, and I'm completely throwing that out of my head, because what he did do was, when it worked well, it was box office. But he was also hungry for work, and I just find myself sitting there watching that going, this is exactly the kind of player that Andy Farrell wants in this team.
So he's the guy that the Tomos Williams try that he's looks like he's been hurt scoring. That was a turning point in the game for me, because that's the passage that I was talking about when the Lions looked clunky and looked like they could be brought into a sort of a really messy kind of affair. It's the turnover that comes, and it's Hansen that injects the pace from his own 22 to get the offload to Lowe to set them away. And his we were sort of as you do, I guess, as a load of sports journalists, kind of discussing what Mac Hansen's fitness testing must be like, because the amount of times that when the ball was hacked clear in periods of play that were lasting felt like they were lasting sort of 2-3 minutes, really long periods of ball in play where lungs are done. He's the guy that's making those important plays. Can I add one other guy that maybe went under the radar a little bit? Josh van der Fleer. Feel like he's a real. The sort of like term systems player is very borrowed from American football, but I think it's pertinent if you're talking about a team that's going to be coached by Andy Farrell and potentially include a lot of Ireland players. And I think he just quietly would have been right at the top of the tackle count. He sets away the Lions for the first try with the offload back to Pollock, having received the tip from Pollock on the gain line. And he was involved on the stroke of half time, I think, when the force got over the line, and he was one of the Lions players holding up another big turning point. I think he just quietly would have gone a long way to being involved in the Test matches today.
Last name for who's up, I think Finn Russell was very calm, did what he does without too much hysterics. Thought that was worth noting. Who's down? Obviously, we've spoken about Scott Cummins. He had a torrid time. The other thing, I think, and this might be a hot take, I don't know. Tig Furlong just does not look as dynamic as we've come to see him. And I heard tale of some folk in Australia saying that he doesn't hold the same fear factor as he maybe used to do. It's one to monitor because he's very clearly a big character in and around that group. In fact, if you see the dispatches as sort of mini documentaries that the Lions are putting up, he's a big voice. You hear him talking after the first team selection. He was one of the names, one of the voices that you'd hear in that team meeting. So he's clearly a fantastic tourist, a very experienced guy with a lot of gravitas. But on the field, he just doesn't seem to have that same punch and power. We'll see. He's not played an awful lot of rugby, if at all. So we'll see if he sort of builds up momentum, but he's one of those guys who I think might be on the wane a little bit, or is yet to discover his very best.
Yeah, credit in the bank is that his phrase. It's sort of a bit cringy phrase, isn't it? But he certainly had enough to merit a look in this series, but it was just very noticeable that the Force definitely had the nudge on in that first half, didn't they? And Finney Beelum, I thought, was fantastic in that Argentina game alongside Ellis Genge. So yeah, certainly interesting times for Furlong for sure.
Good choices lead to great moments. Like when a clever dummy pass leads your team over the try line to victory. Making a savvy move and finding the insurance for you can feel like a win. Go.Compare can help you take control of your financial decision-making. Get quotes in minutes and switch to more satisfying cover with confidence. It's your safety net. Sorted. Rugby teams don't run the same moves week in, week out, so you shouldn't just let your insurance auto-renew out of habit. Explore your options and see if you can score an even better deal. Go.Compare is powering the Telegraph Rugby Podcast this summer and empowering you to make savvy decisions when it comes to your finances.
Okay, it's question time, Charlie Morgan.
Thank you for those. Keep them coming.
So,
We love them.
Joe wants to know, how do you choose the back row? There's so much competition and everyone offers something different. I joked earlier with England about pin the tail on the back row, but this Lions one, there certainly feels like there's lots of guys putting their hands up. And for example, Pollock, we were talking after the Argentina game about how he maybe tried too much, but then he goes and puts in a performance like this against the Western Force.
Do you want my theory? My theory is that they are improvising a bit at 6 from a fairly delicate point, which is that Cheserman and Byrne have seemed more reluctant, or their sides have seemed more reluctant to field them at 6 over this last season. So maybe a year ago, if you were picking, or 2 years ago, if you were picking a Lions side and you had Cheserman, Byrne as 6s, you would be more confident with that. And I don't know how much of, because Byrne had some good moments as ever. He had some clever moments around the ruck. He also gave away a couple of penalties, didn't he? But the Lions, I didn't think looked particularly balanced with Byrne at 6. And it didn't necessarily shore up their line out a hell of a lot either. So what was quite interesting, and I don't think I'm ever going to get around to picking my favourite back row here, but Jack Conan came on at 6, and he had Van der Fleer at 7, Pollock at 8. So you had a lot of mobility there, and what you have there is Conan sort of being the sticking plaster for the line out and the sort of the extra option to add to the 2 locks. Chesham was fantastic, but I do think now he has become, his sole start at 6 last season was when Leicester shipped 80 to Toulouse. So I think he's more of a lock now. I do think he'll get a run at 6 to see if he can balance that out, because the sort of the elephant, and he's a big elephant in the room, is Joe McCarthy. If he commands a starting spot and he's different to all the others because of his dynamism, then you've got a lot of locks to fit into another spot, including your captain. So that's what you've got to kind of figure out as far as the balance, because you're looking at a balance of a whole back 5, aren't you, as ever?
So I've asked you for your starting back row, and you've given me a theory.
No, my theory is that they start at 6, and my theory is potentially that Conan could be the 6 that allows them to get a lot of pace in the side with either Pollock or Earl at 8. And I think Van der Fleer is going to be hard to drop. So how about as a curveball, Conan, Van der Fleer, Pollock? If Pollock keeps progressing to start the first test, I don't know. We're going to have to pick our size later, and I'm not going to pick that.
Sold. Absolutely sold. Okay, Hitchhiker's Pie, and by the way, kudos for the name. with how well Daly played, and this is one of your pet subjects here, the versatility he offers, do you think Farrell will be more inclined towards a 6-2 bench split to take on the Aussies?
We highlighted backline versatility or versatility of individuals within a backline as a really big talking point of the squad initially. So Tommy Freeman, 13, 14, 15 at a push. Matt Hansen, 14, 15, 10 at a push. They have Marcus Smith getting a hell of a lot of minutes getting 80 minutes at 15 against Argentina, and then 20 minutes or so at 10 today. That means they've got scope to do that, and given the amount of back five of the pack options they have, that might be a bit more useful. I have another theory on selection, is that I think they want Aki and Tuipulotu in the same 23, because I think they need that punch throughout a test match, and I'm not sure they'd want to rely on Aki to have to go 80 minutes.
Okay, so that actually rolls us nicely into the next question, because Rugby Bits, and I'm going to assume that this is about the match we just watched, this 10, 12, 13 is the test combo. They have it all and need to have one more run out and then be put on ice. Now, I must say, I thought Ringrose was phenomenal today. I mean, a lot will be made.
Wax blokes in defence.
Well, he just absolutely scalps folk in the defensive line, and then will pop up and do something really nice in midfield. He just seems like such an intelligent player.
Sneakily covers wing as well.
Sneakily covers wing. Okay, well, we don't want to have to keep
no,
players in positions.
There's going to be like 3 backline injuries in the first test.
Yeah. So, I mean, at first I was just like, put these guys on ice, but actually, the calmness of Russell, the intelligence of, I think you can't write off Aki at all as a starting combo in there in the midfield, and him and Ringrose know each other very well. But I mean, you could flit him and Tuipulotu in and out, but actually, there's maybe some credence to that.
Credence to
the 10, 12, 13 combo idea.
Yeah, I think Tuipulotu's settling into the tour. I just think Aki's hard to ignore. I think it was really telling that he took a lot of ball playing responsibility on in the Argentina game. I think he's just seen as a very important guy. But yeah, I would be surprised if at least 3 of those 4, Aki, Tuipulotu, Ringrose and Russell, aren't in the Test 23.
Okay. And this last one, and I think I'm going to push back on this a little bit. Gareth points out there are some brilliant tries, great interpassing and support. However, does this Lions group lack that individual magic man, a Brian O'Driscoll, a Jason Robinson, someone who can break a defence and turn a game on its head? Now, they're asking for stardust here, but I mean, Henry Pollock got a turnover and chipped it over the top and gathered it himself. I mean, it doesn't always have to be from your traditional positions to get something like that. Or am I barking up the wrong tree here? Because we have talked an awful lot about how this Lions group potentially lacks out-and-out pace.
Yeah.
But the interchangeable stuff is superb.
The interplay between them, I mean, the strength of an Andy Farrell side is always how they're going to sort of move as a sort of organism, right? And how much fluidity and intricacy they're going to have with their phase play. The guys that would have offered X Factor and weren't picked, so Darcy Graham, Emmanuel Feobosu, Darcy Graham definitely had a stronger shout. Yeah, I mean, it's a fair point, but Pollock always felt like a selection that was going to add stardust, and you can't do much more than what he did today.
Okay, so that was all your questions. Thank you very much, guys. Charlie, I'm going to have to call it there. We're sort of reacting immediately after the game. There's stuff that we're going to have to chew
in my
on
haste.
Now.
On your scrum half question, I didn't mention
Ben
Ben
Spencer. You're pulling me all the way back to this.
I didn't mention Ben Spencer, who has existing chemistry with Russell and has just won a premiership with him. I'm sorry, Ben.
I could see you screaming to crowbar that one in. Don't worry, we've noted it. You're a big fan of Ben Spencer. You think his
as
name
well
could
as George
be
Horn
in the mix, as well as George. Okay, right. Any other names you want to name?
Rob
Right.
Howley.
So, obviously, we're digesting this immediately after the game. Fantastic to get Charlie Morgan's reactions. Fantastic to get Gavin Mairs talking to us directly from the ground. You're going to be getting an awful lot more of this because the Lions are on to the Queensland Reds next. They play them on Wednesday. We'll get a team announcement around Monday for that one. It's time to get excited about another Lions game already. In the meantime, keep up with everything at the Telegraph Sport. We've got great Lions coverage coming up. You'll be able to pick the bones out of that match that we've just seen with us with all our coverage online, as well as all our other rugby coverage. So, Thank you very much for stopping by, and we'll see you very shortly for the next Lions match.
Go.compare, proud supporters of the Welsh Rugby Union, is the go-to comparison service for savvy savers. We're delighted to power the Telegraph Rugby Podcast this summer and help listeners make good calls on their insurance, energy and more. When things get tough, Go.compare has got your back. Get quotes from dozens of insurance providers and compare cover to make sure you're getting the right deal for you. Start your search for satisfying insurance at Go.compare.